Martin had been working as the overnight attendant at Harper's gas station for years. The small station sat on a lonely road just outside a forgotten town, surrounded by endless woods. It was the kind of place that rarely saw customers after midnight, and Martin preferred it that way. But the quiet had its downsides. The long, empty hours were filled with strange noises. Branches tapping against the windows, distant animal calls that didn't sound quite right, and sometimes the hum of a car engine that never arrived. One cold, moonless night, Martin sat in his usual spot behind the counter, flipping through an old magazine. The security camera showed nothing but empty pumps and a dark stretch of highway. He had just begun to nod off when the chime above the door startled him. The door swung open, but no one walked in. "Hello?" Martin called out, leaning over the counter to peer outside. Nothing. The pumps were empty, and the road was still. A chill ran down his spine as he stood and walked to the door. The cold wind bit at his face, carrying the faint scent of something metallic. Shaking his head, he locked the door and returned to the counter. But as he sat down, he noticed something on the security monitor, a figure standing at the edge of the lot, just barely visible in the shadows. "Great," he muttered. Another drifter. Martin grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and stepped outside. "Hey! You need something?" he called out. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, facing the gas station. Martin took a few steps closer, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The figure was a man. Or at least, it looked like one. He was tall, wearing a faded jacket, his face obscured by the hood. "You lost?" Martin asked, keeping his distance. The man tilted his head slightly but didn't answer. Martin's flashlight flickered, and for a moment, he thought he saw the man's face. His skin was pale, his eyes wide and unblinking, and his mouth was stretched into a grotesque smile. Martin stepped back, his grip tightening on the flashlight. "All right, man. If you're not getting gas, you need to leave." The man tilted his head the other way, and then, without a word, he turned and walked into the woods, disappearing into the shadows. Martin hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. He checked the security monitor again, but the figure was gone. As he sat down, trying to calm his nerves, he noticed something strange on the screen. The pumps were moving. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the hoses weren't swaying, they were writhing, twisting like snakes. He stared, frozen in place, as one of the nozzles turned to face the camera. The power went out. Martin grabbed his flashlight and spun around. The store was plunged into darkness, the only sound the faint hum of the emergency lights kicking on. He fumbled for his phone, but it wouldn't turn on. Then, he heard it. A soft tapping on the glass. Martin turned slowly. The man was standing outside the window, his face pressed against the glass. His smile was impossibly wide now, stretching ear to ear, his teeth sharp and jagged. But what terrified Martin the most were his eyes, empty black voids that seemed to swallow the faint light around them. The man raised a hand and tapped the glass again, his fingernails scraping against it. Martin stumbled back, clutching his flashlight like a weapon. The man's voice came, low and distorted, as if it were being filtered through static.
"You shouldn't have let me in."
Martin's heart stopped. The door was locked. He hadn't let anyone in. But when he turned around, the man was inside. He was standing at the back of the store, his body twisting unnaturally as he moved closer. The emergency lights flickered, and with each flash, the man was suddenly closer. First at the end of the aisle, then in the middle, then just feet away. Martin screamed and swung the flashlight, but it passed through the man as if he were made of smoke. The lights went out completely, and the last thing Martin felt was cold hands wrapping around his throat. When the morning shift arrived, they found the station empty. Martin was gone, but the security footage told a chilling story. The camera showed Martin standing behind the counter, staring blankly at the monitor. Then, at exactly 3:00 a.m., he turned to the camera and smiled. a smile that didn't belong to him. In the reflection of the store's glass door, there were two figures, Martin and the man standing behind him, grinning with jagged teeth.